So it's really good to be here with you this evening. As been said, my name is Tim, so I'm from Birmingham City University, and go out talking about higher education, university generally, and student finance quite a lot, particularly around this time of year, as lots of students are sort of thinking about that student finance part of the application process for university at the moment. It is a really important part of the application for many students, most students. And so it's really important that you know lots of the sort of details about when to do that, how to do that, and what you can do as parents and carers as well along that process. As has been said, I'll take questions at the end. More than happy to sort of take any questions that you might have. Do be popping those in the chat too, if you're thinking of them sort of as we're going along as well. But what we're going to cover this evening, so roughly, so what's the cost of university? Where specifically is that money going when you're going to university as well? We'll talk about the tuition fee loan and the maintenance loan, what's similar between them, what the differences are, and we'll break those two sort of sections down. Eligibility for student finance, the repayment process. So once a student has graduated, how is that money then repaid? Additional income, so there's various different sources of additional income that students might be able to access whilst they're at university, and we will talk about that as well. And then lastly, we'll just finish off with some useful links for you to take away off the back of the session. So that's sort of a brief outline. We will go into lots of detail in this, so hopefully we'll give a general picture of most students' circumstances. But if you are coming from quite a specific circumstance, or your child is, then do sort of ask those questions at the end. And we'll always say there's much more information available on the Student Finance website as well, where you can get sort of estimates for your specific situation too. But to start with, when we look at university costs can generally be broken down into two main categories. And those two main categories are the tuition fee category and the maintenance category. So the tuition fees and the maintenance costs. Now, when we talk about tuition fees, that is generally the cost of the course itself and the cost of the academic life. So going to university, those seminars that you'll get and tutorials, online materials. At lots of universities, BCU included, you can use your student ID pass to hire out laptops for the day. And all of that will come under that sort of tuition fees. And that, at the moment, pretty much standard and across the board at most institutions is at a set £9,250 per year. Some courses that is going to vary a little bit, but for the vast majority, £9,250 per year. Then on the other side to that, we have maintenance costs. So that's effectively all of your living costs whilst at university. And this is a lot more subjective than tuition fees in that it's not always going to be the same for every student. It's the cost of living. So that will depend on where you're going to university, what sort of your budget's going to be when you're there. If you're going to be eating out a lot or getting lots of takeaways, then that's going to be more expensive than if you're trying to eat for cook for yourself, for example. And this will also include things like your accommodation, travel, food, course materials. So all of those costs there are, as I say, a lot more subjective than the fixed tuition fees, which would be £9,250. So it's worth saying at this point here, there are loans available to help with these two main costs of university. So firstly, we're going to touch upon the tuition fee loan. And it's called the tuition fee loan because it covers the cost of your tuition fees whilst you're at university. So as said, tuition fees in the UK currently stand at £9,250 per year. That's actually a sort of a cap that the government has set on universities. So they shouldn't be exceeding that, but you may find some that are a little bit less. And now that whilst that might sound a bit daunting, £9,250 per year, you're not required to pay that amount up front to the university. That's why tuition fee loans are sort of in place, and they're available for students in a non-means tested way, which means that anybody wishing to take out a tuition fee loan will be able to take one out, provided that they've not already taken out a tuition fee loan in the past or had 4 years of funding. So the fact that it's not means tested means that everybody will receive that same amount of tuition fee loan, £9,250. It's not compulsory to take that out, but you can choose to if you want to, and you can take out any amount that you wanted to in between that bracket as well. So anywhere from £1 to £9,250 per year. And this money never goes into the student's pocket or parent's pocket. It never goes into your personal bank account. It's paid to the university from the student loans company. So it goes directly to the university. So when you're thinking about your budgeting and things at university, that's not something that you're going to have to think about and worry about, and because that will be going straight to the university and not into your pocket. And each year when you're doing your degree, you've got the choice whether or not to apply for that loan, and you will need to reapply for that each year as well. So £9,250, what does that actually cover? So I said at the beginning that it covers your tuition fees and the cost of university, but within that, you're getting a lot more than just the academic teaching. So you can see on the screen a few examples of different areas where that money is going to be spent. So the Students' Union, IT facilities, your personal tutor, so an academic member of staff that you can go to at any point at university to support you with academic matters, but also personal, sort of pastoral matters as well. Facilities, the library, all of this will come under this £9,250. So when you're looking at universities and considering your options and where you might want to go, be thinking of the question, what am I getting for my money? Always be thinking, what are the facilities like? Where is my tuition fee actually going to go? Am I getting good value for money? And that's what lots of universities are going to speak to you about when they talk about their facilities and what you're going to be offered alongside the quality teaching that you're getting at that institution. So we've mentioned the tuition fee loan. The other loan, which you'll likely be entitled to, is the maintenance loan. And so that is more subjective, as I said, and there's different sort of methods that are used to determine how much you may be entitled to when you go to university. And we'll come on to that shortly. But student finance will look at things like your household income, what year of study you're in, whether you're living at home or commuting to university, where you're living as well. So it'll even consider whether you're staying in London or outside of London, just because if you're staying in London, the cost of living is going to be higher, and so maintenance loans are higher in London as well. This money here, really important to note, is money that will go into your bank account. And you will receive this as a student at university 3 times in the academic year. Once around the start, September time, and then again around Christmas, and then again around Easter time. So 3 times in the academic year into your bank account. So this is the money that you'll have to figure out how to budget when you're at university. At this point here, I'll mention a very quick thing about the repayments. The last point on the screen says that you need to pay these back because they do come in the form of loans. But you only start paying them back once your income, when you've graduated, is above £25,000 a year. And on top of that, after 40 years, that loan will be wiped off and wiped away. I will talk more about the repayment process later, but just pointing that out now, because these are loans, they will need to be repaid, but they will be repaid in very kind of small, gradual amounts when you're earning over that threshold of £25,000 per year. So I've said that the maintenance loan is more subjective in terms of how much you'd receive. On the screen there, you can see some of the maximum entitlements for the maintenance loan that you could receive. So the very minimum entitlement that everybody will be able to access is £3,597 a year, £3,597. But then that goes up and down a sliding scale, which depends on your household income. And as you can see, so sort of a very higher amount on there would be if you're living away from home and studying in London, you could be entitled to up to £12,667 per year, whilst if you're living at home whilst you're studying out of London, so if you're going to maybe a local university and you're living in the parental home, then you would be entitled to about £8,171. That would be the maximum amount on that as well. But when student finance are calculating how much maintenance loan you'd be able to receive, they look predominantly at household income. So firstly, they assess whether you are a dependent or an independent applicant. So a dependent applicant would be somebody who is financially dependent on their parents, and in that case there, the household income of the parents will be assessed. But an applicant would be classed as independent if they're not financially dependent on their parents. So that means, or however, alongside that, if the applicant is married or in a civil partnership, then the income of the husband, wife, civil partner, or partner will be taken into account as well. There's various different categories that student finance use to look at whether somebody's going to be classed as an independent or a dependent applicant, but those are sort of the two main categories that are used to figure out how much you'll be entitled to when you go to university. So dependent or independent, whether you're financially dependent on your parents or whether you're not at the point that you're going to university. Again, dependent versus sort of independent. Here you can find the categories where perhaps most students fall into. So for parental household income categories, the income that is used is either the combined income of both parents if still living together, or the parent that the student normally lives with or spends the most time with if the parents are separated or divorced, or the parent or step parents or partner that the student spends the most time living with if the parents have separated and remarried or has a partner. And then down at the bottom of the screen, you can see the partner household income categories. So in that case there, Student Finance England would assess the household income of the husband or wife, civil partner or partner. So whilst mentioned at the beginning, we're not able to comment on the category that everybody will fall into. Hopefully this just gives sort of a general idea of whether you're going to be classed as a dependent or an independent applicant, and then from that point there, whose income will be assessed. So this table here provides you with a rough idea of what you may be entitled to for the maintenance loan, depending on your household income. Therefore, students receiving the higher amounts in their maintenance loan are those whose household income totals more than totals £25,000 and below. So in the sort of top left-hand corner there, you can see £25,000 and under, and then the amounts that that student would receive in terms of a maintenance loan. And then towards the bottom of that table, for household income where that's going to be £75,000 and over, again, we can see that those students would still all be entitled to a minimum amount of maintenance loan, which is £3,597, but could be entitled to more if the student is living away from home in London. So everybody will be entitled to that £3,597, but you may be entitled to more, and that'll be somewhere on that sliding scale between that and then the very maximum amount of the top right-hand corner, which is £12,667. So I mean, everybody sort of in this call is going to have different circumstances and will fall somewhere in that table. As I said before, on the Student Finance England website, you can put in much more sort of detail about your household income, and it will give you a very close estimate of how much you may be entitled to when you go to university. And it's really worth doing that so that you have a better idea of how to budget, how much it's going to cost whilst you're at university, whether you're going to need to find other sources of income, bursaries, scholarships, part-time jobs, maybe get additional parental support as well. So do go onto the Student Finance England website and have a look at how much you might be entitled to yourself. I've mentioned lots of the way through this that everybody's going to be entitled to these loans and a minimum amount of Student Finance England sort of maintenance loan. But there are sort of three eligibility criteria that you need to meet to be able to get finance in the first place. Those are where you live, your personal circumstances, so including your age and any previous study that you might have done, and then the university and course that you're actually going to apply to. So in terms of where you live, to apply for Student Finance England, you must normally live in England or the UK for at least 3 years prior to the start date of your course, or you need to have settled status. You won't be eligible for student finance if you're moving to England from another country in the UK to study, because you'll get student finance from your own country. In terms of age, so it's really important to note, and the government like to make a point of this, that there is no age limit for the tuition fee loans. But if you're aged over 60, then you may receive limited funding for the maintenance loan. So that's just to say that actually when you go to university, there's going to be people of all ages there, because these tuition fee loans are available no matter what age you are. Previous study, so you can't apply for another tuition fee loan if you've already completed a degree or sort of an equivalent or higher qualification. But there are some courses where you can get more student finance for. So anybody in the room who's potentially thinking about being a teacher in the future, if you were to do a degree and then want to do a PGCE afterwards, you can get further funding for a PGCE course. And the same again, if you did a degree and then later in life thought, well, actually, I want to do a healthcare profession course, you wanted to go into the healthcare field, you can get second lots of student finance to do courses like nursing, midwifery, areas where sort of there's a shortage and we need more staff to be working in those. But generally, it's for people that are doing their first undergraduate degree. And then lastly, just to mention, the course that you plan to study at university should be at a university, college, or institution that offers some of those following sort of courses that you can see on the screen. So if you're doing any of those, so a first degree, foundation degree, certificate of higher education, you will be entitled to student finance if you're doing one of those. It's also worth noting that you can get student finance if you're doing a course part-time, but you must be studying at a rate that is equal to 25% or more of an equivalent full-time course. So in terms of actually applying for student finance, sorry, this is a bit that lots of people have questions about, and it's slightly different for the applicant and for parents, carers in supporting the applicant along the way as well. But applications can be found on the government website. So I think a link might have just been sent in the chat to that under the student finance section of the government website. There's two ways that you can do this. You can either do it online or you can do it by filling out paper forms. The paper forms might take you sort of upwards of 5-6 hours to do, whilst online is much friendlier. It can be done in a sort of much quicker, and you can come back to it as well. So the form consists of multiple sections, from personal data like your name, your address, to information about your household income, as we mentioned earlier. Once you've created an account using your email address, you'll be given what's known as a customer reference number, your CRN number. That number is really important. It's going to be like gold for you over not just your first year at university, but all the way through. That's your 11-digit username that you need to make a note of for your entire degree. You'll then have, you'll need to have a copy of your passport to hand, and you'll need to be able to upload that onto the system. But if for whatever reason you're not able to provide a copy of a passport, you need to send your original birth certificate. That can provide some sort of issues in that it takes a little while to receive that back afterwards. So we do recommend going for the passport option if you're able. When you look at the form online and the paper version, it might look quite daunting to begin with because they are quite long, but there are big sections that you can just completely eliminate as you go through, where you just answer yes or no, and it's much more simple like that. And then finally, if your parents are required to add details of their household income and not only your own, then they'll be given their own separate login details to confirm that all of that information submitted is correct. And I'll touch upon that in a moment. It's worth noting that it is worth doing this early because it does take some time for these applications to be processed. Applications for student finance are now open. So do this as early as you can to avoid any delays in getting that payment when you're starting university. But if you are a parent or partner sort of supporting a student's application for this academic year, you will receive a separate email and with a separate login and new login details to create an account to support that application. That will be sent within about 24 hours of the student making the application in the first place. On there, you'll then need to submit sort of your national insurance number and personal income from the previous tax year. So the previous tax year that we're talking about is the 2021-22 tax year, because this needs to be a full tax year. HMRC will then check those details against their records, and if there's a sort of a big discrepancy there, they'll come back to you and maybe ask for proof of your income as well. And it's worth noting here that if your household income is going to be 15%, or if there's going to be a difference of 15% more or less in the new financial year than the financial year that you're able to provide, then you can ask to submit a current year income form, and that'll mean that they'll look at sort of your current year's income instead of the previous tax year. And we know that in sort of the market that we're in at the moment, that's applicable to more and more people if you know that your income is going to be 15% more or less than it was previously. But when do you sort of think about applying for student finance? So, as I said, it has opened. It opened on the 27th of February, so a few weeks ago now. The UCAS deadline has passed, so that grey area there shows that. And now is really the perfect time to start the student finance application. As soon as we get into sort of later March and into April, that's when the Easter holidays are happening. Sort of study life gets a bit busier with revising for exams. Then we move on to May, and we're running out of time in May, and the deadline is actually mid-May, so the 19th of May. Really important deadline to note. Student finance will still accept applications for student finance after that point there, but you do run the risk of not receiving that money in time for starting your degree. And for lots of students, that's going to be really, really important for paying rent when it comes to sort of August, September time. So do this as soon as possible. You don't need to know for definite which university you're going to be going to at that point. You can just put down the university that you hope to go to. And if that doesn't work out, then you can change those details later. So do fill in the form with sort of what you know at this point now, and that's absolutely fine and all they're expecting at the moment. We're going to talk about repayment now. So we've covered sort of what loans are available: the tuition fee loan, the maintenance loan, how to apply for those, and when the best time is to do those, and who's eligible. And now the repayment process. Now, if there's one thing that you take away from this talk, it should be that your repayments are linked to your salary and not what you owe. Many students will come out of university with a very large amount of money that they owe after their studies. But your repayments are not linked to that large amount of money that you owe, but they are linked to your salary. So if your salary increases, your repayments increase. If your salary, your income decreases, then your repayments also decrease. As I mentioned before, you only start paying back your student loan when you are earning £25,000 or more per year after you graduate. And at that point there, you're only repaying 9% of everything that you're earning above £25,000. So all of your income below £25,000, you're not paying any of your student loan back. Your income above £25,000, you're paying 9% of that back to pay towards your student loan contributions. So yeah, really important. Remember that these repayments are linked to your salary and your income and not what you owe. You will have interest that accrues on these loans, and unfortunately that is quite large at the moment. We will see that sort of hopefully go down in the future. You can find out much more information about the interest rates on the Student Finance England website as well. Your student finance loans don't go on credit files. So in the future, if you're thinking about applying for a mortgage or any other loans, these credit companies won't be able to see that you've got the student loan. It works in a very different way to sort of standard loans that you'd get. So it's not going to go on your credit record, and it won't affect anything like your mortgage sort of application from a credit perspective. And it's worth noting as well that all of what you owe goes into one big sort of figure for repayment. So your maintenance loan and your tuition fee loan are put together, and then that is the amount that you then owe back. And after 40 years, this loan is completely wiped away. So if it gets to 40 years after you've graduated and you've still not paid back your student loan, that's not a problem. It's not going to be passed on to anybody else in your family. They're not going to chase you for it. It will simply get wiped away after 40 years. So to help us sort of visualize how the repayments work, we've got a little bit of a graph here. So we're going to take a student called Emma, for example. Emma has graduated university and she is earning exactly sort of £25,000 when she graduates. She then gets a pay rise and her salary starts to increase. Maybe she's earning something like £28,000 at that point there. As her income and her salary increases, as you can see on the left-hand side of the screen, her repayments also increase in line with her salary. Then there's a time when she's earning the same amount, so maybe £28,000 continued. Her repayments stay the same through that time, so they're not going up, they're not going down, staying in line with what she's earning. And then let's say that Emma maybe becomes pregnant and takes a paid maternity leave break. So her salary might drop to £17,000, for example, £18,000. At that point there, she is earning less than £25,000. And so she is not making any repayments towards her student loan. So they're completely paused at that point there when she's earning less than £25,000. She then heads back to work and her wage starts to increase, but still at that point there, less than £25,000, so not repaying anything. We can see through that whole period there, no repayments were made. And then Emma sort of goes back into work and is earning over £25,000. Her salary continues to increase, and as her salary increases, her repayments increase as well. So very much in line with the salary, whenever you're earning less than £25,000, you're not repaying any of a student loan. When you're earning £25,000 or more, you're only repaying 9% of everything above £25,000. So to put that into perspective, we've got sort of a mock payslip here of somebody that's earning £28,500. Their monthly basic salary would come out at being about £2,375. Then things like tax, national insurance, pension contributions need to be taken off. And once they're taken off, then student loan is going to be deducted as well. And you can see that this person actually per month is only paying back £26.25 of their student loan. So in terms of the money that they're taking home in their pocket, they're taking home £1,700 and they've paid back £26 of student loan. Another sort of pay slip, this person £30,000. Again, monthly before any deductions, that would be £2,500 per month. Of that, they're paying back £37.50 in student loan. So still, you can see that it's much smaller than the tax and the national insurance and even the pension contributions that this person is making. And then one final example, £36,000. This time, the repayments have increased a little bit. So this person earning £36,000 a year is paying back £82.50 a month of their student loan, which works out at being about £20 a week. So it's definitely worth bearing in mind that no matter how much you're earning, your repayments will always be incredibly affordable and far, far below that which you'd be paying in income tax or national insurance, or even to your own pension. Just to touch upon a few sources of additional income in the form of dependence grants, which I'll speak about quite briefly here. If anybody does have any specific questions at the end, then feel free to ask those. But these sort of dependence grants are for if you have any children or any adults that depend on you financially when you're going to university. So there's three called the Parents' Learning Allowance, the Childcare Grant, and the Adult Dependent Grant. And you can actually apply for all three of these when you go. So the Parents' Learning Allowance for full-time students to help with extra costs of being a parent and a student at the same time. For these here, these aren't amounts of money that are going to be available to everybody. They are just sort of these specific circumstances, and you need to fill in separate sections of your main student finance application form. The Childcare Grant, again, is for full-time students to help with specifically the cost of childcare for children whilst they're at university. And you could get up to £183 per week with this one. And then the sort of last adult, the last dependence grant is the Adult Dependence Grant. So this is for full-time students with a partner or another adult that depends on them financially. And again, you can see the maximum amount that could be available to you is £3,200 per year again. So if you are in any of those categories, do look into these grants that are available to you. They're money that you won't need to pay back when you graduate, but they will really, really help towards sort of affording university in your situations. Another additional source of income is the Disabled Student Allowance income. So this is for if an ability to study is affected by a disability, a learning difficulty, a health problem, that could be a mental health problem or a physical problem, you could be entitled to extra support when you go to university. That's predominantly to cover the cost of any equipment or the cost of sort of services needed to help you whilst you're studying at university. To be eligible for this, you just need to be a UK resident, you need to be studying an undergraduate or postgraduate course, you need to be qualifying for student finance as well, and you need to give evidence and have proof of your disability too. It could also be sort of in the form of a development disorder such as autism, or a specific learning difficulty such as dyslexia or dyspraxia. So if you think that you fall into one of these categories, do make sure that you look into this more. The maximum amount that you could be entitled to per year is actually £25,000 per year. And that's the very, very maximum amount. And for some people, it may just be sort of helping to buy a laptop when you go to university. The government might say that you need to pay the first sort of small amount of that laptop purchase, but then they'll cover the rest to help you with your studies. And this is paid either to the service that is being provided, or in some circumstances, it might be paid into the student's bank account. That would be to reimburse you for something that you've had to pay for, perhaps like a laptop or another service at the university. But it really is worth looking into that when you go to university, because there are sort of lots of support methods in place to help you from Student Finance England and from your university as well. In terms of more additional income, the NHS Learning Support Fund is one that you should really be aware of if you're applying to specific NHS courses. So there is a training support grant of £5,000 per academic year, which is absolutely massive. So that's the NHS Learning Support Fund, the training support grant. And if you're studying a subject like nursing, midwifery, dietetics, operation department practice, any of these sort of allied health profession courses, paramedic science as well, you would very likely be entitled to that £5,000 per year, which is given to you in the form of a grant, so you wouldn't need to pay that back, and you get that on top of your maintenance loan and your tuition fee loan as well. There's also a specialist subject payment for students studying a course where there's a particular shortage within the NHS, so mental health and learning disability nursing, radiography, prosthetics. I mean, you can see them on the screen. If you're studying one of those, again, beware of that, because you get that on top of the sort of other money that you'd be entitled to. And then again, parental support, so £2,000 per academic year for students that have child dependents as well. These applications for these sort of specific NHS Learning Support Fund grants are all made through the NHS Learning Support Fund application system. So that's found online, and that actually opened for applications on the 1st of March as well. So about 2 weeks ago that opened. Again, this is something that can be done early. Do it alongside your student finance application at the same time, because it takes a while for these applications to be processed as well. But on top of all of this, there's more income available for sort of students in lots of other categories. So you may find scholarships, bursaries or grants from your university that you choose to go to, and that could be something due to academic success, perhaps something sort of down a music route. There could be bursaries available for travelling and going abroad as a part of your degree as well. And it's worth noting that for lots and lots of these scholarships and bursaries, they're out there, but people don't apply for them. People don't know about them. So actually your chance of being eligible for one and receiving one might be higher than you think, because they don't get as many applications as they could do. But you could also look to sort of employers linked to certain industries that might give you money to go through your degree. There's lots out there in the forms of scholarships, bursaries and grants. At BCU at the moment, we have an offer called Upgrade, where if you beat our published entry requirements by 1 grade or more, you'd be given £1,000 into your pocket to kickstart your first year at university. So if you beat the entry requirements that were sort of published and asked for, then you get that £1,000 when you start. But there's lots more information on our website for our scholarships and bursaries, but on all different university websites, you will find a sort of very large range of different scholarships, bursaries and grants that are available. So as I say, do look into them, because there are lots out there, but there aren't that many applications. So really, really worth having a look what's out there for you, seeing if you're eligible for any, and just applying for them. Often applications don't take that long for these, but even if it's just an extra £100 that goes into your pocket when you start university, that is well worth having instead of not. a few further sources of income at university. So you may find that your maintenance loan actually doesn't cover all your living costs whilst you're there. With the cost of living going up, maintenance loans haven't actually increased in line with sort of the rest of the cost of living increasing. So you may find that you need to have a part-time job at university. You could work as a student ambassador. So on our open days, we have students that work, they're getting paid to be there to support on those days. And to work as a student ambassador, you do receive very good pay. You can choose when you want to work as well. It's very flexible, and that's going to be the same across all the boards, so all different universities across the board, really. Look into summer or holiday sort of jobs, maybe in the summer before you go to university or whilst you're at university. Look what you can find. That's going to be valuable not only for the source of income, but also for experience. All of these things are going to be really good for experience. But we would recommend that you don't work more than about 16 hours per week. And that's just because if you work more than that, then the demands of trying to balance a part-time job and university level study, that does get quite a lot and can be a bit too demanding. So we'd keep that to sort of 16 hours a week or less. As I say, you can look for paid placements, which will give you more experience as well during your holidays. And there's lots of student discounts available too. So even when you're thinking about sort of what bank account you might use when you go to university, there's student bank accounts that give you great bonuses. Interest free and fee free overdrafts are available as well. You might get a free rail card as a part of your sort of student bank account. But do have a look at what's out there, because all of these things are going to save you money whilst you're at university, meaning that actually your maintenance loan will go further than it would otherwise. Just a few sources of sort of further information. The UCAS website has lots of really great information on sort of money generally and budgeting at university. The main one that I would point you to would be the student finance section of the government website, and I know that link has been put in the chat. Really worth going on there early just to see how much you might be entitled to. The student loan company, so again, they can give you sort of really specific information about the repayments, and that's where you'll find answers to very specific questions that you might have. And we'd recommend following these sort of bodies on social media as well, on Twitter, on Facebook, just to receive updates from them. So they put on there things about when the deadlines are coming up, when different parts of the applications are opening, so that you can be aware of those early, and that you're not being caught out by sort of late applications or anything. And then again, on our website, we've got information on sort of, again, budgeting. We've got a mock sort of salary and payslip calculator, figuring out how much you'd be repaying in terms of your student loan when you graduate. So there is absolutely tons out there to help you through the application process and beyond as well. And do come and sort of speak to us at University Stu. We're very happy to give you help and support. And the university's admissions teams are all very clued up on the finance side of this as well. So lots of places that you can go to for sort of questions and concerns. But that's the end of what I've got for you now today. Very happy to take any questions if there are any. Maybe I can give you a couple of minutes to think of them and write them in the chat as well. But thank you very much, and I guess over to you for questions. Thank you, Louise.
Thank you very much indeed, Tim. That's so comprehensive, and I'm hoping that students and parents have been able to absorb all those figures and facts and figures. And Faye's been putting things in the chat busily as well with the links, so thank you, Faye. Tim, can you, whilst we're waiting for questions, and please do type those in the chat if anybody has them, or we can circulate those to Tim afterwards if you would like to contact us. The PowerPoint will be being sent out, yes, on the recording as well. So we'll get that out. If we could have your PowerPoint, please, presentation, Tim, that's great. But can I just ask as well about anybody who might have thought about doing an extra year abroad or anything like that? I know you've touched on sort of extra years and how people can do that, but perhaps anything like a year abroad or a sandwich course like that, how that might be financed?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, and that actually now depends on the university to an extent as well. So in the past, we were part of the Erasmus program, but that has obviously changed, and there's now different sort of schemes in place for if you are going to go abroad. It will depend on the country that you're going to as well, but you will likely still be entitled to the maintenance loan. When you go there, it might be a reduced amount of the maintenance loan, but you'll be entitled to something. And for placement years in the UK and placement years abroad, they will often sort of be paid when you're doing those. And the amount that you're paying to the university is going to be really reduced from what you'd normally pay. So that'd be somewhere in the region of 15 to 20% that you'd pay when you go to when you go on that year, instead of paying the full £9,250 to the university when you're not there.
That's really helpful. Thank you. And I mean, we encourage students obviously to take on placement years or years abroad, especially in the current climate, bearing in mind the employability thereafter can be, a high percentage chance. So that's really helpful. Thank you. So a couple of questions coming in. One parent obviously saying having two children at university at the same time, does that get taken into account with the maintenance loan? Could you elaborate on that at all, please?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, and that is, I think, something that they're probably wrestling with, because unfortunately it's not. The maintenance loan looks at your household income sort of from your salary, but it won't take into account any support that you're giving to children whilst they're at university. So if you do have more than one child at university at a time, that is then sort of a situation where that child might need to be working at university, find something in the form of a part-time job, or be looking to these scholarships and bursaries and everything else that is available. Because unfortunately, you picked up on a good point there that no, the maintenance loan won't, you wouldn't be entitled to more because you've sort of got siblings at university as well.
Thank you. I hope that's answered the question. Thank you. But please do put anything in the chat if you'd like to ask anything further on that. Another question, that you mentioned the paper form of the student finance takes quite a long time, some hours. Can you explain why that might be? I mean, I think I know the answer to that, but can you explain that?
Yeah, it is. Sorry, yeah, it is just a very, very long form. It takes a while to get that form as well. You can print it up yourself, but you can also be sent it to. When you're doing it online, whole sections can be eliminated straight away, and they won't even appear on the form. Whilst when you have the paper version, you have all of the sections, and you need to go through yourself, sort of figuring out which parts you need to fill in. Sort of part 3, A, B, C. Whilst online, it will just take you through exactly what you're going through. When you're putting in figures online as well, it does calculations in the background to sort of fill in different numbers in terms of, it will break down sort of yearly things into monthly things, and it will do all of that for you, whilst the paper version of the form isn't going to be doing that, and you're going to have to do that yourself. So we do recommend doing it online. You can, of course, print out the paper one, have a look through it, and you could then choose to do it online sort of alongside it. But they do still accept the paper applications, but we do just recommend sort of the online version as well.
I think I'm right in saying as well that as you go through the online form, you can save it at certain points, I think, which actually helps, because if you need to go away and look up things or think about things, you can actually save it. It's an account that you've set up, so you can actually sort of go back into it and adjust.
Yes.
I think.
Yeah, and as I said, parents and carers will get a separate login as well for the student finance system if supporting the application. And if you're sending one off in the post, then that's going to take longer to come through. So if you do it online, that comes within 24 hours, but in the post, that's going to take longer. And with this, the deadline, as I said, is partway through May, which might seem a way off at the moment, but actually with sort of all the other parts of the UCAS application, deciding where to go, going to open days, revising for exams, it's a very busy time of year. So we do just recommend doing that as soon as sort of possible.
And I think, if I remember rightly as well, that the application process kind of gives you a heads up at the beginning as to what you might need to answer most of the questions. So I think it's fairly simple online, as long as people do have access, and we understand that everybody doesn't always have access. So yeah, the paper form is there in case, but it's not as flexible.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Another good question, as well as income, are savings taken into account during the financial assessment?
So they're not taken into account in terms of your income because it's not classed as income, but interest that you're receiving on your savings will be at that point there. But no, your savings as a whole aren't taken into account when you're applying. No.
Thank you. And that's really helpful, I think, for a number of people that you've explained the online process as well. Whilst we're looking at any questions, can I just again just thank you very much for the detailed accounts, and we will be circulating this information, and we'll make sure that parents get a link to the recording as well, so we'll send that out. As I say, Faye's been very busy in the background. I'll just give everybody just another couple of minutes in case there are any questions. I did have a couple of questions, and one related to, I think if I can get my piece of paper here, just regarding repayment.
Yep.
And I think that was, if I can just take one brief look about that. If you wanted to pay some of your accommodation, I think, but as you went along, it was about reducing the loan at the end. Can you pay lump sort of parts of the loan off in order to reduce any loan?
Yep. So once you've graduated, or even before you've graduated, you can pay off big lump sums if you wanted to. That's very much up to you. But you just go onto your student loans company account online, and then with your sort of login details for that, and you can see exactly how much you owe, exactly the interest that's sort of building up on that, and you can make payments at any point from that. So normally the repayments would be deducted automatically from your salary, so you won't need to worry about that. It happens through the payroll. But yeah, you can go on and do it in lump sums if you wanted to. It is worth noting though that, as I've said, after 40 years that loan is wiped away, and actually for the vast majority of students it wouldn't make sort of economic sense perhaps to be paying that off because of the nature of how much you'd be paying off each month from your salary. It's a very, very small amount, and after 40 years that'll be wiped away. So if you still have something left at that point, it's not a problem. It will just get wiped off.
Thank you. And I think actually it is a very good economic way of having the value of that at a certain time and paying a very little amount off in comparison. So that's excellent. As Faye has put in, if there are any further questions following on from this session, you can put that into the careers@keds.ac.uk after the talk is finished, and we will then pass those on to Tim. We've got one more question coming through. Can the fees go up partway through the course if the cap was increased? Is that fixed at the beginning or as a contract, or is that certainly something that can be altered during the time?
So I'm not going to say this for certain, but I'm fairly confident that sort of it's set from the year of entry. So you'll continue to pay those fees all the way through your degree, but they may change that partway through your degree for people in the future, but that wouldn't affect your sort of repayments. That is something that sort of is at a more government level in terms of changing the repayment process as well. So it recently changed where the loan used to be wiped off after 30 years, but now it's wiped off after 40 years. And so things can change. Do keep an eye on what is changing, but on the whole, no.
Thank you. And I think you know, normally the sort of contract that you take out is set for your time, but as you say, it can certainly change for future generations, and certainly has done over the last few years. And this academic year, these students who are online now, it certainly has changed for them. So there have been quite a number of changes, I think, in the RPI part of the agreement, and also in terms of the number of years from 30 to 40. So that certainly has happened. Thank you very much indeed, Tim. Please do, as I say, continue to send any questions you may have via our Careers Act. Keep an eye on the website, and parents we will be sending round, obviously, to all of those who've attended this evening and making available the recording and the presentation, Tim. We thank you very much indeed from BCU. We would encourage students and parents to go and look at BCU on their open days. days, as we would to as many universities as possible, but BCU have always been incredibly supportive to King Ed students, and we very much hope that students and parents will go along to the open days. We've got a question, but very quickly, about taking a gap year before starting uni. Best time to apply for finance. I don't know if you've just got 1 second to answer that for us, Tim.
If there's any sort of doubt about whether or not you're going to do that gap year, apply anyway. Get it done, and then if you don't do it, you can always sort of say you're not going that year, but I'd say do it anyway regardless. Yeah,
it's much better to get that in and change things retrospectively than not get them in, isn't it? Yeah. That's lovely. Tim, thank you very much indeed, and to students and parents, we hope you've enjoyed it. We look forward to seeing you on the next speaker series. Thank you very much indeed. Take good care all, and see you soon.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening all. Thank you.